It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
All right. Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I am the host here this morning. We cover a four-topic spread every morning. You're catching us in the middle of our show, and so you're catching us on the third segment. I would encourage you to do a couple of things. First and foremost, if there's an opportunity for you to join our friends over at Patriot FB, please make sure that you do that. Patriot FB is a kind of a clone of Facebook, and yet it's all patriots, and there's no trolls and there's no censorship. So it gives you an opportunity to meet with a couple thousand other people that have similar views and opinions to you. And in addition to that, you'll find tons of great information there by people who post up stories and articles that are of interest to you. In addition to that, they stream and carry America's Voice Now. And it's not just a great site because of that. I'm also a member there, and I post stories and articles up there every day. So you can use it as kind of a centralized source for news and information as well. They are also hosting other radio programs, including J.J. McCartney's program at 2 o'clock, the J.J. McCartney Show. Now, J.J. is a great radio guy. He's been doing it for 30 years, a true professional. You will not be disappointed with him. And you have an opportunity to listen to his program as well as Resurrect the Republic with Tom Lacavara. Now, Tom, by the way, is out there right now at the Bundy Ranch, and he has been, I think, all this week. And so I encourage you to hear his program from 10 to 11. He comes on right after me. And the way for you to get there is to just visit patriotfb.com and sign up there. There's another website that's similar to that, but different in many ways, and that is Constitution Club. So I encourage you to go to constitutionclub.ning.com. Now, that's run by a guy I know who has created a unique atmosphere there in the sense that there are about 3,200 counties or 3,400 counties in the United States. He has created an individual website for each county in the country. And so you can join other people within your county, and you know you may not even know some of them existed until you jump on there. And if you join there and there's no one there, then start bringing your friends in there, and you guys have a perfect way to be community organized, if you will, right? So the Constitution Club has a bunch of other radio programs that they promote over there as well. They have all kinds of cool information, and they stand strongly for the principles of the restoration of our republic through constitutional restoration. And so I encourage you to visit those sites and make sure that you are, working with those guys. There's also a friend of mine who runs a website over there called Survival by Preparedness. And if you have an opportunity, you can go visit his website, survivalbypreparedness.com. And Mountain View Off-Grid Living. So there's a lot of guys and girls that run different businesses that are members of Patriot FB or Constitution Club. And so let's make sure that we're keeping our money in our own circle of influence as well, right? I mean, that's a good idea because it enables, one, our business partners to grow their business, while at the same point in time, it enables us to get the products and services that we need. So make sure that you do that. If you have an opportunity, by the way, I'd like you to visit Atlas Survival Shelters. If you are a person, I saw an article the other day about how some of these, the super rich are buying these ultra-luxury doomsday bunkers and things like that, where they're building in-ground swimming pools and, saunas and hot tubs in a bunker. I mean, a little ridiculous. But there's a guy who I know that runs Atlas Survival Shelters, and I got to tell you, he builds these ones that are in these steel tubes, and they're buriable, and they're not luxury by any stretch of the imagination, but they will certainly keep your family and you members of your community. If there's ways you can build them in community clusters, or you can just bury one on a piece of property you have. The upshot is that you will not be disappointed with what he has. It's called AtlasSurvivalShelters.com, and you can visit over there. Jump onto his Facebook page as well, which is under Atlas Survival Shelters, and hit the like button as well. All right. Our topic for this segment is the IRS has activated an enemies list. And what's important about that is that it's not just a question now of us suspecting that, the IRS has been intending to utilize the list of these organizations like 501c4s and Tea Party groups as an enemies list. We now know that they've actually begun using it, and so they're firing the weapon, not just carrying it. Here's the analogy to this. If you were in a place where you saw someone who you knew to be potentially a risk to the community, and you saw someone like that who was carrying a gun, you would say, there's a risk that's even a greater risk now because he's got an arm or a weapon, which makes him potentially even more dangerous. But when that individual has that weapon loaded and begins to use it, now your greatest fears are confirmed. I'm going to analogize this for a moment to what the federal government does to us. It says that you cannot own a weapon because there's the potential out there for you to be dangerous. In fact, it says all felons, irregardless of whether or not they're violent or nonviolent in their crime, are barred from owning a weapon because they're potentially dangerous. Well, I'm going to sit here and tell you that we've seen the actual verifiable proof. Every one of these federal agencies is potentially dangerous with overreach. But in this case, this one's actually firing the weapon. And guess what? The mainstream media? Crickets. They went down the other day, and I talked about this on our radio program the other day, but I'm not hearing anybody in mainstream media talking about it. They went and shut down and pulled the 501c3 tax-exempt status for the Patrick Henry Center for Individual Liberty. They pulled their status. And they pulled their status based on their free speech. Here's the difference, ladies and gentlemen. This proves beyond a reasonable doubt that the IRS is actively targeting political enemies of this administration. Because the two things that they used as claims for pulling their tax-free status was comments they made about two people, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Hello? One's currently in power, and the other one is the heir apparent. This is a power play that if it's allowed to move on and no one pays any attention to it, it will inflame these ideologues in a way like giving a hardcore alcoholic a fifth of gin and watching him chug the entire thing. They already feel free to go after conservatives. We've seen that with the IRS's actions in barring certain groups from gaining access to the 501c4. We saw that in the exposés of all of the emails that clearly state what their intention was. And even after all of that, when they actually take the gun that everybody was pointing to and saying, hey, are you sure we should allow that dangerous entity to hold that gun? They fired the gun in public into a crowd, and nobody said a word. To me, ladies and gentlemen, it is the height of hypocrisy and arrogance for the government to say, you can't own a dangerous weapon because you have the possibility to become a domestic terrorist. That you, if you go out there and buy MREs or flashlight batteries, are a domestic terrorist. If you support Cliven Bundy and argue against the BLM's unconscionable theft, that you're a domestic terrorist. But when it comes to the IRS, they can operate with impunity and immunity. They can destroy any organization or group they want. They can use the IRS. They can use the ATF, as we watch them do against Catherine, shucks, I can't think of her last name, Engelbrecht. True the vote. I mean, the woman got audited suddenly. She had visits from the ATF. She got visits from the FBI. So, I mean, all the weapons were brought to bear. And the media, for all intents and purposes, was silent until Congress forced a hearing on it and exposed it. And even then, no one is saying, hey, everybody in the IRS needs to be removed. Well, we have to wait and see what the investigation exposes. The investigation is exposed all kinds of things, and nobody's doing anything. So now, because they've been operating with immunity and impunity, now they've taken it a step further. Now they're actually assassinating people on the street, and everybody's going like this. Oh, I didn't see that. I didn't see that. I didn't see that. See, in this case, there's some differentiating factors that make this the Patrick Henry Center unique. One, when you talk about the Tea Party groups like Albrecht's organization and all the others that went to the IRS to obtain their 501c4 status, they approached the IRS. In this case, the Patrick Henry Center was targeted. The IRS lined them up in their sights, took careful aim with a sniper's crosshair, and pulled the trigger. They also did the one thing that they knew that they could do that was that would injure the organization and that was virtually impossible for them to fight back against. And that was they disallowed their tax-exempt contributions, which they knew would starve them to death. By the way, for those of you who have heard me say over and over and over again, we have to starve the beast, maybe the federal government is listening to me more than we are, those of you in the audience, because they're apparently very cognizant of the value of starving your enemy to death. The enemy to them is anyone who believes in liberty and freedom. The enemy to them is anybody who is against their overreach, their policies, their unconstitutionality. For the record, by the way, the Patrick Henry Center has been up since and up and operational since the 1990s. I mean, this isn't an organization that sprang out of nowhere. And it was approved back in 1998 as a 501c3, but they've been in existence even since the mid-90s. It was founded by a former FBI agent and a best-selling author, a guy by the name of Gary Aldrich. And he's been a very, very harsh critic of both the Clintons and the Obamas. Now, the IRS has really, in this case, stepped over the boundaries of enforcement because they've really gone out of their way to find someone that they can make an example of. And, this is exactly the way that tyrants always work. Find one person who you can use as a prime candidate and a prime example, someone who apparently has some stature in the community, someone who's outspoken, someone who's looked at and respected, and hang them from the nearest tree in front of everybody in town. And they'll all get the message. See, the truth is, everything that they went after the Patrick Henry Center is a duplication of what's going on by every one of their left-leaning liberal groups, except they're not against the Clintons and the Obamas. The truth is that what we're seeing here, and in this case, you have to recognize what this is. This is very specifically a methodology which, this is terrorism. It is government terrorism, government-sponsored domestic terrorism, utilizing a federal agency as the mercenary soldier for hire. Why is it that America, specifically the mainstream media, but also run-of-the-mill Americans, are not outraged? Everyone fears the IRS. But it's okay for them to abuse the law as long as they're against one of your political enemies. Is that what you're trying to tell me? What are the liberal progressives going to say if ever there's a Republican administration? Not that that's likely ever in the future, by the way, but let's just play along with the utopian fantasy for a moment and say that we actually got a Republican administration. Okay? And that's not my fantasy, I might add, because the truth of the matter is the Republicans don't represent us any more than the Democrats do. But suddenly you start seeing a democratic organization like George Soros or one of their, the Southern Poverty Law Center or one of their groups suddenly being targeted by a Republican administration that controls the IRS. Are all of you on the progressive liberal side of things going to say, well, what's good for the goose is good for the gander? I doubt it. You see, the truth is, actually, if you really want to look at this from the right perspective, there shouldn't be any 501c anythings, 3s, 4s, or otherwise. No one should have preferential access to politicians. That's why the entire country is awash in corruption and greed and money manipulating the political game. I gave you guys news the other day on an article from Princeton and Northwestern that says the United States is no longer a republic. It's now an oligarchy. And Princeton and Northwestern are bastions of the political progressive left. And they came out and said they've reviewed thousands upon thousands of policy changes, and it is clear, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the United States of America is now a corporatocracy. You know why? Money. Their study actually says, and I'm going to read this to you because you need to hear it, that reality is best captured by mixed theories in which both individual economic elites and organized interest groups, including corporations largely owned and controlled by wealthy elites, play a substantial part in affecting public policy. But the general public has little or no independent influence. We believe that if policymaking is dominated by powerful business organizations and a small number of affluent Americans, that America's claim to being a democratic society are seriously threatened. The truth is, they're stating very clearly, very emphatically, very pointedly, the central point that emerges from our research is that economic elites and organized groups representing business interests have substantial independent impact on U.S. government policy, while mass-based interest groups and average citizens have little or no independent influence. Let me explain to you what a 501 anything group is. A special interest. Business interests. How do we know? Because we see them use these organizations as a front. Even churches should not be 501c3. You know why? Because it's being used as a means of corrupting your clergy. The truth is, what we really need to have is we need to have a tax reform in this country that eliminates the IRS altogether, because either taxes are paid on what you purchase or taxes are paid on some other manner, some fair tax variation or something along those lines. But the truth is that what we now have is a plutocracy that is geared and designed to accomplish one thing, and that is the success of one small group or a tightly knit group or organization of oligarchs at the expense of all the rest of us. And the IRS is just, that's the attack dog, the weapon, the mercenary of this administration to accomplish its ideological and political goals. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is not what this country is founded upon, and that is an act that can be construed as treason, because you are aiding and abetting the enemies of a Republican form of government, and you are utilizing and abusing the power of a federal agency to conduct domestic terrorism against the citizens of that country. And there is no other way you can justify it. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. You can communicate with me directly. You can send me email to comment on this or any other article that we or topic that we talk about. You can contact me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. If you can support this effort in any way, please visit our website. We've got a donation button there on PayPal. If you can't get it through PayPal, you can always mail it to us. America's Voice Now, P.O. Box 1195, West Plains, Missouri, 65775. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. There are a group of Tea Party organizations that have some explaining to do about how they're spending the donations. We'll be right back.